Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, live on the Creative Bird Strategy podcast here on Clubhouse and everywhere else. We are situated throughout the social media buckets of the world. So I'm getting ready to start our great discussion this morning. DSCR taking a deep dive in creating wealth through leverage. So I'll get started here in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to place something up that caught my eye this week, which I found really interesting. It was from a report given to us by Arbor on the annual rent growth markets, which I thought was really interesting. Um, they they really put together a comprehensive breakdown of the top metro markets and annual rent growth markets, and this kind of ties into DSCR and what we're going to be discussing today. But first, we'll do some preliminary stuff. I'd like to always thank our sponsors this morning. I'd like to thank Percatech. I'd like to thank Lenmark Capital. I'd like to thank MB Capital, Realty 411. Without these sponsors, we wouldn't be here. And I'd like to always thank Yardell Perkins, my business partner and associate on this podcast. He's our social media strategist, and I call him the Oz behind the drape because he really brings so much value and so much heart to this podcast every weekend. We give back in education, networking, and opportunities. At one time, Yordell and I ran, I think it was like 5 or 6 events a month. It was very rewarding, but time has a value, and you have to weigh out the cost benefit relationship to your time when it comes to events. And this podcast came together on its own and made a lot more sense to give this back every 60 minutes or so, twice a month, twice a week, and it's worked out very well. I'm still here obligated to, well, not obligated, but dedicated to working through Clubhouse. Is where we started the Creative Birth Strategies podcast, and then we kind of morphed it back into a regular podcast on Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the real true social media sites that are out there. And we created a website, creativebirdstrategies.com. I have my own personal website up, josephscarice.com. It's really turned into just a portal of opportunity and collaboration and opportunity. So I appreciate, the time that we've put together as a team, because, I wouldn't be able to, there's no I in this. There's a lot of we in this. And I wouldn't be able to do this without the support of so many people. But crazy week, month end, some really interesting job reports that came out that kind of reflect on what's really going on in the market. So we'll dive into that in the next few minutes here. I don't have any of my regular moderators here, so if anybody would like to raise their hand, come up and chat with me, be more than happy to have that discussion with you. But in the interim, let's go over some news first, and we'll dive into this. Oh, a couple other things. I am having some educational events on the CE course for licensed real estate agents in Philadelphia and New York. I know May 22nd, I'm in Philadelphia, and in New York, I'm in New York, June 15th. Both are CE courses for licensed real estate agents, but investors are more than welcome to attend as well. I know on May 22nd, it leads into a happy hour. So if anybody has any questions, please email me or text me, and I will be more than happy to get you that information. Also, we have worksheets, and we definitely have worksheets on DSCR. So really, if you don't have the worksheets, please make sure to reach out to me and inquire about the worksheets that I offer for all my clients or potential clients in regards to DSCR, in regards to MAO, maximum allowable offer, cash flow worksheet, which is the cash on cash return, rehab construction budget, and a data tape where you can obviously understand how to build out your real estate portfolio. So let's talk about mortgage news daily this week. The rates have been anywhere as high as 7.5. They leveled off to about 7.28. Job reports came back a little soft. No surprise there. Unemployment's creeping up. Fed is not making a move. They're staying very steady in what they're doing because inflation is still just really whacked out. I don't, if anybody thinks inflation is under control, they're just, I don't know what they're watching or what they're spending money on. Everything is like 100%. I saw some comparative of cost of goods from 4 or 5 years ago. It's like 50%, 120%, big margins of cost increases on all these materials. It's very hard to comprehend, and this is obviously impacting the real estate market. And this is also impacting, in a weird way, price to rent index when it comes to DSCR. So you really need to pay attention to what's really going on around us with the rental market and how that reflects on DSCR and how that's going to reflect on values in time. Okay, there's some domino effects that are happening around us. I don't know if you're really paying attention or you're just focusing on your own portfolio, but you need to see what's going on around you. The rental real estate inventory is increasing rapidly, not because there's not a need of rentals. It's because so many conversions are readjusting DSCR as we know it in front of our eyes. When you have thousands and thousands of new rentals coming to the market quarterly, it's going to eventually impact the DSCR requirements on a property, the rental market values of the area of where that property is, and it's going to eventually trickle into values. And in a bigger landscape, it could level off values in some markets. Now, there are some markets that have done very well, and their homes are still selling extremely quick, specifically in the suburban settings. Now, I'll tell you about some interesting markets that the market is still very high, very hot. Median days in the market are very low, and there's some things you got to keep in consideration. The Hartford area of Connecticut, Syracuse, New York, the surrounding area of Harrisburg, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Rochester, New York, Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Kentwood, Michigan, Richmond, Virginia, Columbus, Ohio, New Haven, Connecticut, the surrounding area of Boston, Cambridge, Newton, into New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and the surrounding area of Washington, Arlington, Alexandria. Why? People are getting out of the metro cities, safety, crime, education for their children. The reverse model is happening right in front of our eyes for home ownership, where everybody was striving to get back into the city for all the accommodations and the conveniences and the entertainment and the arts. Everybody's kind of rolling reverse and getting the hell out of Dodge. This is happening in Philadelphia. This is happening in, Chicago. There's some serious things happening in our market that are impacting still home ownership. And there's a changing face to the American home buyer, and that's going to change the face to the renter. It's going to increase that renter. Okay. We talked about this. People are buying property out of home ownership out of necessity, not out of like, hey, I got to go buy a home. I'd rather rent. I mean, the newer individual that can afford to either rent or buy, they're renting. They're waiting. They don't want the obligation of commitment to ownership. They want somebody else to take care of things like that. So there's some good points when it comes to DSCR and deep diving, creating wealth through leverage. But what I'm saying is that you need to understand your markets, and location still applies wherever you go. So the Fed is still trying to assess recent hot inflation readings, meaning economy is overheating. So what this is doing, it's impacting cost, it's impacting commercial space, and it's carving out an influx of more rental inventory coming to the market this year than ever before. Like a lot of these malls that are out there are now carving out an average of 1,500 to 2,000 doors of rentals in every mall. Now, if you bring 2,000 rentals to every mall in the country, that's quite a bit, maybe even more. There's a lot of malls and there's a lot of space. How does that trickle into the single family through 4 family space for the investor, right? in time, that's going to change the dynamics to the DSCR requirements and the quality of the units and the quality of the tenant. But what it will help is low-income housing impact, where there's such a lack of that inventory, and a lot of landlords are going to become Section 8 landlords, where then the individuals that can afford to not live in that type of environment are going to live in a more controlled environment where the eat, work, and live concept is. So it's going to be very interesting. And that, there is where you're going to see the separation of the institutional owner, meaning the big hedge funds, and the single family through four family landlord, individual landlord that's working DSCR, working asset-based lending, using all the elements that are out there for understanding cash flow and understanding DSCR. So let's talk about Arbor's report this past week by Shannon Economics, which I found very, it applied quite a bit to what we're discussing today. Rents in the single family market has risen fast in the Midwest and the Northeast, with Madison, Wisconsin actually outpacing the entire study right now. And I was in Madison, Wisconsin this past year. What a fantastic market. It jumped by 11.5%. So if you go into this link or save this link for later, some of these markets I've been talking about for the last several years, they're really strong. You got Madison, Wisconsin, Springfield, Massachusetts, Syracuse, New York, Rochester, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, Akron, Ohio, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Charleston, South Carolina, Jackson, Mississippi, Richmond, Virginia, Pittsburgh, PA, Kansas City, Missouri, Birmingham, Alabama, Knoxville, Tennessee, Toledo, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Durham, North Carolina, Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, Missouri, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Little Rock, Arkansas, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Omaha, Nebraska, leveling off is Virginia Beach, Virginia, Wichita, Kansas. These are really good markets, and there's still availability to buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and redo. There's some strong information in this article provided by Arbor. I thought the report was brilliant. I thought there's some great information in here. It really kind of gives you an understanding of current and versus cyclical peak of rental and how that looks and what rent growth and where it's not doing so well comparatively. I think it's definitely a great read. I think you should get your hands on it. So let's dive into our discussion this morning. Debt service coverage ratio. What is debt service coverage ratio? So before learning the ins and outs of a rental property loan, it's beneficial to understand the calculation and the purpose of debt service coverage ratio. Lenders use this ratio to determine if you have sufficient funds to repay your debt. The lender will use the information to decide how much money to lend when requesting a loan or refinancing an existing one. DSCR is the ratio of income generated for every dollar owed to the lender. So the higher the ratio, the more net operating income available to service the debt. For example, 1.25 times DSCR reflects that the asset generates $1.25 cents for every dollar owed. Put simply, DSCR looks at the monthly debt payments associated with the property, including loan payments, and compares them to the property monthly revenue. The lower the debt service, the greater risk that you may have to go out of pocket to pay the loan should the property sit vacant or the operating expenses turn out to be higher than expected. So DSCR only takes into account principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It doesn't take into account deferred maintenance, vacancy, and other common area maintenance impact to that bottom line. So remember, when you're putting your calculations together, you need to understand how a lender looks at DSCR and how you should look at a DSCR. You should be taking other numbers into account when I'm as an investor lender. I'm looking strictly at PITIA, but as an investor, you should be looking at the other items that impact that bottom line, because that's going to impact your cash flow. So what, you're at a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio with me. you should be a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio or better with all the other bells and whistles involved: vacancy, deferred maintenance, common area maintenance issues. Who's responsible for the water? Who's responsible for the maintenance of the outside of the property? These are things you need to take into consideration and understand the qualifications for a DSCR loan. So when qualifying for a DSCR loan, the lender considers several factors, including the borrower's credit score, available reserves of 6 months PITIA. So if, say, your monthly payment of PITIA, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and association fees, is $1,000 a month, I want to see $6,000 in either a retirement account, savings retirement account, something that justifies that if the place goes empty, you can carry the water till you reoccupy. And anybody could tell you vacancy is real. You just don't automatically reoccupy your unit. There's turnover costs. There's the time element to get it rented. You can't just say you're going to have it re-rented right away. It just doesn't work that way. So understanding the ability to pay that property's mortgage and expenses while it's vacant is extremely important. And I think a lot of people don't really realize credit score also impacts the debt service coverage requirements by a lender. Now, as an asset-based lender, we go as low as 660. So there's a category for 660 to 680, 680 to 700, 700 to 720, 720 to 740, 740 to 760, and then 760 above. That impacts your leverage and your DSCR requirements on any given asset. So like yesterday, I took a loan with a broker. She was brokering to me, and the middle credit score was 678. I was only able to go to 65% loan to value to meet that debt service coverage ratio requirement. Now, if the credit comes in higher, then the debt service coverage ratio allowability would allow that LTV to go up to 70%, but it only capped that client at 65%. It wasn't a bad rate. It was a lower leverage loan, and the debt service was very high. It was like 1.6, 1.7. But at the end of the day, we were limited because of credit score. So, we don't look at tax returns in the asset-based lending space. We don't pay stubs. We don't care about the personal debt to income. We care about the debt to income of the physical asset. Lenders often consider a good debt service 1.25 at one time. Now it's turned to 1.2. And now lenders allow down to 1.0. And if credit's really good, we'll even let it go down to 0.80. Why you would do that? Not really sure, but it could be circumstantial. It could be circumstantial. Maybe you couldn't sell the property and you want to hold it on one more year to reflect on the new year or the new selling year. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe get past capital gains, because capital gains eats up a lot of profitability unless you get 1031 that money and that profit into another deal. So timing wasn't there. So you could take the lower DSCR and float out the year or two and then sell the property off. That might be a reason why your DSCR is so low and that you might eat the frog in that situation. But you have to be careful with that, because if the place goes empty, you're really responsible to that overhead. So typical debt service loan options, it's single family, 2-4 family, 5 to typically up to 25 units under 3 million. It will also look at townhomes and condos. It will not look at mobile homes. Okay. It will not look at vacant land. It will not look at log homes. It will not look at tiny homes. It will not look at houseboats. Okay. They don't count. I mean, it's nice that there's creative opportunities out there, and I really do appreciate the creativity of the investor out there, but we don't like that stuff. It's not going to happen. And another thing you want to keep in mind, this new concept of pad split or whatever the hell they call it, at the end of the day, rooming houses, there's no home for that. It might be a local play, maybe a credit union or a local bank that might have an appetite for that. But again, when it comes to DSCR specifically, in the discussion we're having this morning, you want to stick to the single family through 4 family or 5 through 25 units under 3 million loan amount. Now, let's talk about mixed use. There are some products out there that allow mixed use up to 49% of the rentable square footage of the property. But rates are going to be definitely higher than the typical rates of just strict residential. Now, if you don't have experience in the commercial landscape of mixed use, I'd probably say that shouldn't be your first property. Get yourself a little accustomed to understanding how to be a landlord, and then do some homework on being a mixed use owner, because it's definitely a different tenant. It's definitely a different loan. There are 30-year amortized loans out there, but the rates are definitely going to be like same their DSCR rate that comes in for a single family through 4 family is somewhere between 7.25 and 7.75. 5 through 25 rents are coming somewhere. I mean, rates are coming in somewhere, probably somewhere between 7.5% and 9%. I can tell you for a fact that there's mixed use and there's commercial presence to the unit. You're probably looking at somewhere between 8.5% to 9.5%. So if you're not using the correct rates to evaluate your DSCR, you're not going to balance out correctly when you're evaluating a deal to buy on the back end. If you're going to do a BRRRR, meaning buy, renovate, rent, refinance, redo. And why do real estate investors use DSCR loans? Well, it's the best point of entry in creating wealth and creating cash flow. And asset-based lending, that is the backbone to DSCR. I mean, they're backbones to one another. They lead into it, and they only lend in an entity or an LLC. So none of these loans are reflecting or impacting your personal credit, or should not be impacting your credit, but it allows you to increase the ability to scale your rental portfolio. You wouldn't be able to have this capability in your personal income to support multiple mortgage rentals. So I was at an event Thursday evening, and I was talking to a young lady, and I just refinanced another property, and I'm like, okay, I'll bite. Where are you getting your loans now? Like I don't usually ask, but every time I talk to her, she's always doing a refi. So figure she never calls me, so not insulted. I don't, maybe we're not a good match, but whatever. She's like, oh, I go to a local credit union, small credit union. I said, you've done like 10 or so loans with them. I said, you must be capped out. She goes, yeah, they just told me I can't come back anymore. I might be able to squeeze one more through, but that's it. I said, then what are you going to do after that? She goes, well, then I'll have a conversation with you. I'm like, okay, sounds great. But she's at 10 properties. But the loan amount, she's probably at about 2 million. So I'm sure that's their capacity per client. They don't want too much responsibility with any one client. But, she's going to have to enter the DSCR realm. She's not going to have to she will not be able to do a full documented loan with a local bank. They can't walk in and give her another toaster. It's not going to happen that way. So the ability to scale and increase ability to buy is through DSCR. And you really need to understand your market rent, your after repair value, and how you buy it, and what the renovation costs are going to be, because all these moving parts impact your back end numbers. Now, where I've seen the most amount of success with DSCR and BRRRR is when the renovations are under 50% of the purchase price, meaning you're buying it for $100,000 and you're putting no more than $50,000 into the project. That's paint, flooring, maybe a kitchen update, a bathroom updates, roof, mechanicals, siding, landscape. Did you notice I didn't say gut to the studs? The average renovation time on a BRRRR to get to DSCR is 7 months. You want to average somewhere between 4 and 6 months so you could prep the property and get it rented by month 6. Because your best rates for DSCR are 6-month seasoning, so you could start your loan 5 months one day and close 6 month one day. There are opportunities at 3 months. There's also opportunities with no seasoning, but the rates are definitely different. The appraisal is looked at a little differently, but at 5 months, 1 day to start the loan, to get it closed in a 6 month, 1 day is probably the smarter play because you're in the bridge loan, you're at an interest only. So you're not carrying a full debt load. And I'm seeing vacancy up about 2 months on average in most markets. In some markets, it's lower than that. But again, depending on how long your renovation costs take to complete, and are you adding contingencies in your cost of repairs? Like I met with a contractor yesterday on my way back from an event, and his renovation costs, he came in, it was a full gut, I mean, a beautiful home in West Orange, New Jersey. Absolutely gorgeous. He probably spent close to $400,000. He was about $25,000 over budget. But it was just beautiful, the end result. I mean, this property is gonna sell right away. It's one of those premier money markets where, whatever the rate is, someone's going to buy a home because the inventory is so tight. The educational system there for the individuals' kids are so good. Crime stats are low. It's just a beautiful area. It's right near a reservation. It's really gorgeous, gorgeous home. Very experienced contractor and developer, and he knows what he's doing. We had a great conversation. We knew actually a lot of the same people. He knew some of my family, so we had a great conversation. Just about we just didn't talk about the beauty of the house. I mean, he did a beautiful job. 4 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms. I mean, you had to see these bathrooms. They were just absolutely gorgeous. The ceramic work was just amazing. And the finishes were great. But again, that's not for DSCR. That was more for flipping. So you need to be cautious of what you're putting into these properties. You need to find those opportunities of ceramic on sale, granite on sale, paints on sale. Get your discounts through your RIA. Get a good roofer that gets good. Maybe you buy the material and they just do the labor work. I mean, when it comes to DSCR, the documentation is light or lighter. The complication is getting the deal to DSCR, buying it, renovating it, getting all the moving parts, contractors come and go. So if you keep the renovations quicker, and more common sense, you're going to have a better results on cash flow and a better results on long-term generational wealth. My most savviest of borrowers are not maxing out the loan to value on their refinances to keep moving forward. Most of my most savviest borrowers are at 70% loan to value when they refinance out of a BRRRR. And they're renovating, and most of my savvier borrowers are buying something for 100, putting 30 to 50 grand into it, restabilizing it. The places are appraising at 180 to 200. They're getting their money out plus closing costs, and they're leaving any of the potential equity in the deal, and they're looking at the long-term value of cash flow on that property. They're not going out to 80%, throwing 30 extra grand in their pocket. They're getting everything they have into the deal, balancing. And believe me, there's a half a point difference in the rate based on all of this. A half a point rate in the rate over time, over 5 years, over whatever the amount of years till the opportunity that you could refinance or the property or sell the property is big. It's not small numbers. Pros and cons of DSCR loans, and this ties into creating wealth through leverage. Increased accessibility. Now, there's direct private lenders, there's correspondents, and then there's brokers. You need to understand the differences, and there's nothing wrong with all three parties. But understanding who you're working with is very important. I feel the most important thing to whoever you work with on the lending landscape for DSCR loans, the key to it is communication. You notice I didn't say about rate, cost. It's communication. Who's picking up the phone to talk to you about your deal? Who's taking the time to communicate with you about your deal. But again, then it does come back down to cost as well. And you have to weigh out the cost benefit relationship working with either a direct lender, a correspondent, or a broker. And there's value with each one of them. You just need to determine how that works for you. Also, with DSCR loans, there's greater investment protection. Everything's done through an LLC. Everything's done through the business entity. You can further protect your personal assets and your other investments. They're quicker closings. So rehab loans, meaning fixed to rent, fixed to flip, take somewhere between 15 and 20 days. They do require an appraisal. It's for your protection. You don't want to drive by, believe me, because it will bite you in the ass. You want to know what your after repair value looks like from the inside out. You want to know what your capability of your rental market in that area inside and out. So you could really figure out what your DSCR looks like. You could scale faster. I've seen clients of mine go from 1 to 5 properties, and now they're at 10 to 20 properties. I'm seeing also flippers turning more into holders of properties because flipping has slowed down. The renovation costs to those flips are higher, more time spent, and at the end of the day, the profitability is a little less. So they're deciding to do a little more creative work to hold the properties and build generational wealth. The differences between DSCR and asset-based lending, the true difference in traditional lenders is that we have guidelines in the asset-based lending space. Traditional lenders have regulations. And that's really where it boils down to the lending options and the documentation requirements to a DSCR loan. And a true DSCR loan is the ultimate method for the Burr method, and it's a strategic approach to real estate investing. Obviously, the Burr method: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, and is the ultimate breakdown that leads to DSCR. Choosing the ideal debt service for you it all depends. You could think about this. You could be at 1.2 on every deal. You could be at 1.4. Like, you don't want to refinance unless it's no less than 1.5, because that 1.5 means 500 a month per door. Now, I have one investor. She doesn't want to make anything less than $500 a door. And how that reflects in the DSCR, it's somewhere around 1.4 to 1.5. I said, well, listen, you gotta always debt service on your back end at 1.5. So you need to find a property with a certain amount of renovation costs, because she's big in the Section 8 space. So you know what your Section 8 is for the 3-bedroom, 1 bath and a half. So you need to find that model and repeat it over and over, repeat and rinse, repeat and rinse, repeat and rinse. Calculating your debt service coverage ratio is a vital step for any investor, but it's very important to know what the target DSCR is that matches the guidelines to your personal real estate strategy. You'll be able to choose the best debt service range that fits you best. Then you're ready to find and finance deals to build out your rental portfolio. Good morning, Joseph. Welcome.
Good morning, Joe.
Did you just wake up?
I did. We have that on replay. Everybody knows.
That's good. Listen, we can't see your bed head. It's all good. It's fine. So, Joe, we've been diving into DSCR, and I know you're more of a cash on cash, return kind of guy, but eventually when you get, to a certain point, you're going to have to enter the DSCR realm, right? There's only so much capability of these local banks and credit unions. Have you had a deep discussion with anybody of understanding like your version of cash on cash return? Have you ever looked at that and see how that reflects in the DSCR of a physical property?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I look at DSCR and stop me if I'm wrong, Joe, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm still a novice in this world, right? I look at DSCR as a product, right? The banks and the lenders call them products, right? Whether it's a 30-year mortgage, a 20-year mortgage, a 15-year mortgage, a DSCR, it's just a product, right? Leverage is just leverage. So I really look at, you know, what that money is, right? How expensive it is, and how much I have to put down in order to and the rental income in order to create the cash flow, and that's where you're generating wealth. You know, I had a property that I bought cash that I was making 10% on, but when I leveraged it, my cash on cash return went up to 25%. It just made sense, and that's even on a 7.9% interest rate. So it's all relative. You got to do your numbers, right? And that's where it comes down to. So you're creating wealth. You know, what grows faster, the money at the 10% rate or the money at the 25% rate with the less in? Now, granted, you're talking about a smaller amount at 25%, but now I have that additional funds in my pocket to go buy another property. And it just helps with the velocity of your money.
So, let's talk about strategy here. Are you looking at a down payment of a little more to strategize your cash on cash return and your DSCR? Are you looking at maybe blanketing your insurance policies to trim on insurance costs? What are you doing specifically in identifying DSCR to build out your generational wealth with every acquisition that you're involved with?
So, I mean, I never thought about it blanketing insurance policies, right? The only blanket insurance policy that I ever thought of was like an umbrella policy on top of the individual policies that I had for each property. So that's a good question. So that might be something that I have to talk to my insurance agent about a blanket policy. When it comes to DSCR, like, yeah, if I have to put more money down, that's okay to make it work. But really, I'm looking at that return on my investment. I'm looking at how fast my money is going to grow, and when I'll have it. And I hate this term "return" to me, right? Because at the end of the day, you know that if you put $50,000, $100,000 down on a property, and it's giving you a 20% return on a property, that $100,000 down never goes back, goes away. It stays in the property. So at 20%, easy math, in 5 years, you're gonna get that 100K back in your pocket to reinvest into another property.
But Joe, not everybody looks at 5 or 10 years down the road. They all look about now. That's the problem, don't you think?
Or investing in real estate is not about now.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is not get rich quick, right? The get rich quick schemes, they generally don't work.
Yeah.
So you have to look at 5 or 10 years down the road. Even with my properties, I'm looking at every 5 to 7 years, as long as the numbers make sense, I'm going to refinance those properties. I never want to own them outright. I plan on refinancing those properties, pulling the additional cash out that is A, tax-free, and B, that I can reinvest. Now that's equity that I never even created, right? The tenants paid down, appreciation came that I didn't have to work for the appreciation, and I'm reinvesting those funds. But, it's a debate that I have with my brother all the time is, he's big into larger investments. And we started looking at the cash on cash return, and his returns were 10%. He goes, yeah, but it's 10% of a bigger number, so I'm coming home with more in cash flow. You're coming home with less. I said, but I'm making 20% of mine. So in 5 years, I could roll that same down payment that I have back in my pocket into another property, and now I'm making 40% of my money. Now, a mathematician may say it doesn't work exactly just like that, but at the end of the day, I'm now doubling my investment, and in 10 years, I'm at 40%. And in 10 years, I now have double those down payments to put into another, and in 10 years, he only has one down payment to buy another. So Of course, this doesn't account for maintenance and any other problems that you come across. Um, so that's how that all goes. So uh, that's just how I look at things, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent. Everybody has their own strategy and their own practice and their own policy, but that's kind of how I look at it. Uh, I'm not looking at appreciation. Appreciation I look at as a gift. Um, you know, if the property stays the same value, that's fine. And Joe, the magic mark is what, 5 years where you really start paying the principal down.
Yep.
So in 5 to 7 years, you're going to look to refinance. That's just my strategy and how I look at it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I'll add to this, and then Nick had a question, so we're going to hopefully answer his question in a second. But my concern is, okay, listen, if you're looking short term in a loan and you're worried about rates coming down, which they're not anytime soon, so good luck with that idea if you're trying to push that agenda. You're going to see 9-10% before you see 5% again, guys. So either eat the frog and swallow what's in front of you, or you need to get out. Okay, because rates are somewhere between 7-8%, riding out this roller coaster of inflation and job concerns and commercial constraints. We just saw another bank have massive reset. You got more banks coming that are going to have some reset. It's just happening. Okay, so either accept the fact you're not going to have 2.75 out there for yourself, or you shouldn't be a real estate investor. You should just learn how to buy better or get out of the way. Okay, so bottom line, if you want to look at a 3-year play instead of a 5-year, because most DSCR loans come with a 5-year prepay, which is fine. And the loophole there is you are allowed to pay down principal just not more than 20% of the loan amount per year for the first 5 years without penalty. It's not telling you that you can't make a 13th payment every year. It just says you can't pay the loan off. You're not reading the documentation correctly. Okay? So if you want to look at a 3-year prepay instead of a 5-year, you're going to pay anywhere between 1/4 to 3/4 of a point higher on the rate. Or it's going to cost you in buy down to keep the integrity of the rate that you want. And it's going to cost you at the closing. So pick your poison. I don't find it poison. If I know a lot of clients that like 3-year prepays, and that's okay, but they know they're either going to pay it in the closing costs or they're going to pay it in the rate. Pick it and make sure the DSCR works, because vacancy is real, deferred maintenance is real, common area maintenance of a property is real. And if your property is empty, it is costing you for real. Nick, good morning and welcome. You have a quick question in regards to your inquiry through the chat. If you know how to unmic, I know you're new to this, but if you'd like to ask your question to Joseph and I, be more than happy to hopefully assist.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you very much for putting this on. First time joining, so really appreciate it. It's been very valuable. I just had a question. I've talked to other lenders in the past, and I'm a new real estate investor. One of the things I had heard was if you're looking to do the BRRRR strategy, that there's a 100K ARV limit. So if you look at some of those lower end markets, and I was looking at that article that you had sent, some of the markets I was looking at, you could scoop up a property for a little bit lower. It's going to provide a pretty good cash on cash return, a really quick turnaround from a BRRRR perspective. But I'd heard there was a 100K ARV limit. Is that accurate?
It is accurate, because the problem you have, Nick, is the secondary market, meaning like that's buying the paper back and forth with you as a direct lender, find a higher risk based on a value below 100 than above 100. So, and then the question would be, hey, can I accumulate a bunch of properties and then they equal higher than 100 grand? I'm like, no, you can't. So you got to look. I mean, if you're going to be a DSCR investor, if your market is the values are around 100 grand, look at 2-family houses that at least the value is 120 grand. You know what I mean? Because the loan amount has to be above 75,000 to be able to debt service it and get an approval. And that's the difference between guidelines and regulations. Like a traditional lender that works for Fannie Freddie, they don't care about the loan amount. I mean, they don't want to do low loan amounts. They don't want to brag that they can do them, but you got a better shot at doing it in your personal name, but that reflects on your personal credit, and they're going to do a full underwrite. So you got to pick what makes sense for you, what you want to have on your personal name, comparatively to what you want to do through your LLC. And low is not always good. I know there's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot more risk. And a house that's worth 100 grand, if I got to take that back and you go into foreclosure, by the time I get it back, it probably won't even be worth 10,000. So I have to look at the cost benefit of the recovery of the asset as an asset-based lender, not just the DSCR and the cash on cash return. Does that help you out a little bit?
It does. Thank you very much. It's very valuable.
Where are you looking right now, Nick?
So I've been looking at multiple markets. The Toledo market, which popped up in
Yeah.
that chart, they've got some really good, call it like 900 square foot houses that you can scoop up in cash, do a quick rehab because it's 900 square feet,
Yeah.
and then turn it around. The question is like ARV is going to be somewhere between 90 and 110. So
Yeah.
you're right on that fringe.
You're right there. You're right there. So what I would say is, how's the two-family market there, Nick?
From what I understand from talking to local real estate agents, it seems like the single family houses tend to rent out a little bit better, which is why I was targeting younger. So I really don't have that answer.
In Toledo, Akron, and Youngstown, I'd consider more in Cleveland. If the values are still, I mean, I it's hard to believe that they're under 100 grand because of what's going on in Columbus and Cincinnati, but I would suggest identifying two families where the values are popping around 120 to 140, 150, and you got a better shot at refinance. Yeah, the rents are not going to be as bad, not as great, but I think your cash flow will be as good or better, but you're going to have much more options on DSCR with whoever you decide to work with.
Joe,
Yeah.
couldn't he, let's say he could swing to it and find a private investor.
Yeah.
He swings to it, and then you could do a blanket loan or a portfolio loan on two of them, which would be over the $100,000 threshold.
Well, I have to look at what the loan amount is per property. So say hypothetically, I mean, again, I've done loans in Cleveland, I've done loans in Toledo. So what I do is I put the value at 110 and pray and light candles that it comes in between 100 and 110 per property, because it could come back and bite us if it doesn't. But it also depends on what the work that's been done to the property. If you're just throwing paint up on it and hope you're going to increase the value by 40%, that's not going to happen. It's got to be a nice completed property. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I was just wondering if it was a value thing, or if it was per property, or if it was just a loan product with a blanket loan has a different threshold.
Yeah.
It's the 100K mark.
So, like, I'll give you an example. On the bridge, meaning a fixed to rent, Joe, in Cleveland, I'm doing a loan where the guy's buying the properties between 30 and 50 grand. He's putting about 30 to 40 grand per property, but we're doing three of them at the same time. And I'm doing that bridge loan at 10.5%. And my fee is $2,500. It's just a flat fee because it's not even a large, it's like 100, I don't know, it's like 100, 200,000. It's not even a $200,000 loan all in, but I was able to get it approved on the bridge, fixed to rent, and in hopes that on the back end, he's hitting 100 grand per property. But since we already going to do the fixed to rent loan, we're most likely going to be able to do, if we're doing the bridge loan, we're definitely going to do the DSCR side. So that's how you get to work with somebody on a bridge and do a couple of them together. You're almost not guaranteeing, but you're almost kind of playing out your exit strategy with that lender. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
And listen, the cost of that loan seems higher because it's a low dollar amount. I have to charge $2,500 no matter what minimum to any loan, or 1 point, the higher the two. So it looks heavy, but hey, listen, it's the cost of doing business. If you're going to make that kind of cash flow on those single family properties, in a market that's slow trickle like a Toledo. I mean, Toledo's not going to stay at $100,000 value as Ohio. Everybody's moving. I mean, the migration into Ohio is tremendous right now. The movement into Indiana, the movement into Oklahoma, all these Midwest movements are forcing values up. It's going to be like you said, it's going to be a 5 to 10 year play in being the better investor. But my gosh, the opportunities could be. I mean, Nick could turn around and own 10 properties and be a multimillionaire in 10 years, right?
Right.
So it's not a bad move. It is definitely a way of creating wealth, not just on cash flow, but on equity value. I mean, anybody that bought properties in, Cincinnati, Ohio, 5, 10 years ago with poor property management presence and really poor circumstances and made it through that and was able to stabilize and move forward, they're multimillionaires right now, right? So they didn't look at the short term; they looked at the big picture, right?
Right. Right. I get it.
I mean, what
So
do you?
you just have to find a lender or a private investor to get them to that threshold.
Yeah. And Nick, I got a question for you. Where are you located, if you don't mind revealing that?
Yeah, I'm located a little bit north of Philadelphia,
Okay.
the suburb of Philly.
Okay, so have you looked in by us? Oh, so Nick, why haven't you looked at Cumberland, Atlantic, and Salem County?
So I've got a couple of irons in the fire. I'm working with folks in the Lehigh Valley area.
Okay,
I was trying to limit, what my reach was because I've been stuck in analysis paralysis for a little while now.
got it.
So I was trying to limit to a couple markets. But listen, I'm open. I'm trying to get in real quick.
So I'm going to dive into this, and Joe probably will agree with me, I hope. So I work with one of the largest buyers in the South Jersey market, Cumberland, Salem, Atlantic County. He is the biggest buyer. Okay. He's buying 5 properties a month very aggressively. And let me tell you, DSCR is real. It works. And you need to surround yourself with a power team in your immediate half-hour radius of where you reside. And I'm going to tell you for a fact, I'm doing all his refis right now. And all the DSCRs work. And he's not going more than 70% of most. Sometimes he'll go 75%. But he's a very analytical guy. He owns over 450 doors. He plans on owning 1,000 doors in the next 3 years. I hopefully am a part of that, that circumstance. But he's on the right track, and it's all in Salem and Cumberland County. So unless I'm missing something, Atlantic County as well, you don't have to travel for opportunity, Nick. I think you just got to create a different circle of circumstances, meaning your power team in your immediate area.
No, it's great advice. I'll definitely do some research. If you've got any recommendations, I'll reach out directly to you.
Please, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I like Lehigh Valley a lot. Okay. I like Schuylkill County a lot. I like Lackawanna County a lot, but you're here with us right now. And you might not be old enough to remember a magazine called Reader's Digest. Some of us down below are probably old enough to remember that, but they said to always stay within an hour of when you own where you live to look at opportunities. Now, I'm a big fan of out-of-state landlording. I think there's a massive amount of opportunities in other markets. But if you're just trying to start out and get your feet wet and dip your toe in the pond and creating wealth through leverage and DSCR, I think there's opportunities within a half hour where your doorstep. Joe, some thoughts to the Cumberland, Salem, Atlantic County market, since you buy in that area, and do you find relevance to your opportunity that you own in Ohio? Do you regret buying in Ohio? Do you find it still as a lucrative opportunity of cash flow? I'm a fan of the Midwest, so I like the Midwest. I like anything east of the Mississippi or a little west of the Mississippi.
So I don't necessarily regret buying in Ohio, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's professionally managed, and I have no control of the property. So on the rest of my portfolio, the other 6 properties that I own and manage. And I have control. I have the connections. I can look and touch and feel. I don't have to go. I don't have a 10-hour drive or a flight away from my property if I have to be out there. and it's just a different way of investing, right? I prefer the areas, right, that 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 abide me, um, and take it that way. But you know, I don't regret the Ohio move, but you know, property management, especially if it's your first one, you're completely owned by that property manager, right? And listen, there's horror stories out there on property managers not looking to get Nick scared, right? There's horror stories. There's also great stories about property managers.
Yep.
But I mean, when you start investing, I think that there's definitely is value when you're owning and managing your own first, and you're learning all the nuances of picking renters, collecting rent, uh, dealing with security deposits, getting a handyman to do the repairs, and kind of understanding the home realm. I think that generally makes you more solid of an investor. So, I mean, I would, if I had an opportunity to invest in Ohio or invest locally, the local investment would win a day every day.
Yep, I would agree with you. Good morning, Stephen. Long time no talk to from the West Coast. Have any thoughts on DSCR? Does DSCR still exist in your market in California?
Hey, good morning, Joseph. Based on that, I mean, I think the rental market took a deep dive down. A lot of Airbnbs out there.
Yeah.
As far as the residential income, it's hard to find furnished spots. The rental it's gone down.
Mhm.
It's not kept up as much. It's there, but for instance, you might find one or two homes per city or three. Then people use Zillow as a way to market it and go that way. But definitely a strong Airbnb rental like that, but outside of the old rental, I think took a hit during the pandemic. So it's definitely not what it used to be.
Yeah. I would imagine. I mean, listen, short-term rental still exists in the DSCR space, but there's certain requirements. Now, I'm going to go over them real quick so you understand them. The DSCR guidelines for short-term rental, it needs that you need to have a trailing 12 income and expense year of ownership, right? It also has to have a 50% occupancy or better. The likelihood of those two coming together is getting more difficult. And what happens if it doesn't meet those requirements, it falls back to the market rent of that area, and then your DSCR drops. And so you're gonna have a lower leverage on that loan. And if you could swallow that pill because you know the big picture, you're gonna spin off a lot of cash on the short-term rental, then so be it. But if you're looking to high leverage on the experience and don't have a trailing income and expense of 12 months, nor do you have 50% occupancy or better, you're not going to get a very good looking loan in the short-term rental space right now. And with all the constraints of the hospitality associations crashing down on areas and territories, I will actually be speaking at an STR convention in the Poconos in August at Kalahar Convention Center. So if anybody's in the Pennsylvania market, I will be speaking there in August at the STR conference. And I lay it out very simple. There's nothing to hide here. And I think that the DSCR opportunity through asset-based lending is tremendous. I think there's a unique opportunity. And here at the Creative Bird Strategies house here in Clubhouse, as well as our podcast, we are the only club on this room in this clubhouse that offers complimentary worksheets for you to pencil down your deals: DSCR, maximum allowable offer, cash flow, rehab construction budget, understanding your schedule of real estate owned. We also offer a CE course licensed in every state in the country to provide agents insight in navigating through asset-based lending and understanding DSCR, understanding maximum allowable offer, understanding cash flow reports, understanding how to price a loan out, and what the impact is to DSCR to credit score and leverage and based on the asset type. And we're here every Saturday morning, 8 a.m., and every Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. as well. Joseph, your final thoughts to our discussion this morning, DSCR, deep dive, creating wealth through leverage.
Yeah, no, good discussion, at least for the portion that I've been on, right? Always, as always, you're bringing value to the audience. It's all about the numbers, right? And it's all about your investment strategy and what works best for you. The products are out there, and listen, if you have any questions on how things run, just talk to Joe. You just see he ran down a couple examples today. He talked about a couple of products, portfolio loans versus ARV, and how it works as a whole. And I told you about how I look at a cash on cash strategy. So those of you who may be new to investment should have walked away with a couple of nuggets there. So thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joseph. Please email me. I know there was an inquiry, how do you get the forms? My email is on my profile. My phone number is on my profile. You could text me your full name and your email. I'll send you everything you need. In regards to the forms, I'll send you some information on what we do as a lender, a direct private lender, and I'll send you some information on unsecured business lines of credit as well. Keep you informed and educated in the market. Tune into our podcast. I think we're in the 30th plus podcast on the website. You can go to creativebirdstrategies.com. The report this morning was provided by Arbor, which was a great on the SFR annual rent growth markets. Definitely save that as a whole. And my thoughts this morning, I always like to give a quote to think about. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? That's my quote this morning. And I want to thank you for your engagement, your time, and listening in. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody have a blessed Saturday morning. I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds. And thank you to our sponsors again.